Empire.
Hello and welcome to my podcast. It's Friday. That means it's time for keys to the game, the Commanders facing the Lions, and then a prediction at the end. If you're following us on YouTube, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. If you're listening to us and you want to subscribe to the John Conn Report, do so wherever you get your podcast. It's always much appreciated on YouTube. Again, you can find us at Empire Media, AMPIRE. Check us out. We appreciate it. Let's get to the keys and the predictions to the Commanders game against the Lions on Sunday. So let's start with the first key. Limit DeAndre Swift. Kind of obvious, right? He rushed for 144 yards last week, 175 yards from scrimmage. I will say he did practice on Friday, did not practice on Wednesday or Thursday. I believe it was an ankle injury that was limiting him. Certainly expect him to play, so we're just going to assume he's going to play. So how do they stop or at least limit DeAndre Swift? He can be an explosive player. You heard ESPN's Eric Woodyard on the podcast earlier this week. If you didn't hear it, go back and check it out. But he gave a really good scouting report on what the Commanders will face in the Lions and Swift in particular. One of the things that the Lions did really well last week against the Eagles, a lot of traps and some power runs with Swift, getting him into the second level unscathed. There were a lot of times he wasn't getting hit right away, or if he was getting touched at the first level, it was a hand touch, right? So technically it's yards after contact, but it really wasn't a clean shot that somebody missed. You get him out to the second and the third level, he's going to make some guys miss. And I do think that one of the things that this team likes is that they feel like their corners are going to tackle better than what they saw in film from the Eagles corners last week against Swift in particular. So again, they do that well. A couple of times they saw the Lions, what they also did well, they'd let the defensive line from the Eagles penetrate, get upfield. You want to go to the side, we're going to take you to that side. But what they would do is instead of double teaming, they would then release two of the linemen and get right to the linebackers. So that way they funnel the guys to wherever they want to go, play off that, get to the second level, create a positive situation for Swift, get him in open space and let him move. So the key there is the linebackers here have to be aggressive attacking the line. That's something that they've been a little bit better at, Cole Holcomb and Jamin Davis. But I wouldn't be surprised if you see some of the looks with David Mayo in there as well. We've heard a lot of talk this week about Jamin Davis. They felt like his game was at best so-so in the opener against Jacksonville. A lot of that stemmed from coverage issues. It wasn't that he got beat by Christian Kirk. It's that, yes, they know it was a tough matchup for him, but then he compounded it in their eyes by not always playing with good leverage or not playing to his help. So sometimes he may have help inside, but he'd play inside leverage, which then forces Kirk to go outside, away from the help. Little things like that where they felt like he could have helped himself better. Now, again, against the run, in this case, we're talking about Swift. And let me say this about Davis. He got beat by ETN on the early wheel route against the Jags in the opener. But then, and that part of that was he just took a very flat step. After that, against the wheel route, he did a much better job opening up and taking that route away. So they're not done with his development, but there was a lot of talk about him, so I wanted to address it while I was talking about the linebackers. But don't be surprised again if they go to some Mayo Holcomb to stop the run, because that's what they feel the best run stopping look is. Also, if Cam Curl can play when he gets back, he still has the hand wrapped. He's questionable for Sunday. One thing we did see him out there and active more on Friday, but one thing we haven't seen him do that he hasn't done is catch any passes with that hand to test how the thumb is. And I think that's clearly because they don't want to do it just yet. And he said that the ligaments still need to heal. He told us that earlier in the week. But when Curl is back, you can then, as I talked about in the podcast the other day, you can then go to some of those 51 sets, 5D linemen. They like that look. You could do it again Sunday, create some one-on-ones for the lineman, one linebacker, but then you can get that three safety look with Curl being a big safety up in the box, allows you to use Derek Forrest as well in that situation. Another way to get speed on the field is if you did that, you can go, again, 5 D-backs, but put a Jeremy Reeves with McCain in the back, get some speed, and then Benjamin St-Juste or Forrest up near the box. But again, those are all different packages. But my point is, don't be surprised if you see some of Mayo this week in that role. So just let's see what happens there. I don't know for sure, but I do think it's something that bears watching, especially after the way they were talking about Jamin Davis during the week. But again, the linebackers have to be aggressive. You sit back and wait for them, he's going to get that. Swift will get to that second level. The other thing, when the Eagles held him well, they would funnel him back to the middle where there is help. That's another key and something that they must do very well. Gang tackling against him is a big key because, again, you get him in the open field, second, third level, he can make guys miss. Second key, win inside. And that means with the interior of Washington's defensive line. And that is a good thing for Washington that I'm going to list this because that's where they're strong and it's where Detroit is weak, especially this week. So Duron Payne and John Allen both had really good games. I thought Payne was really, really good last week. Very active against Brandon Sheriff. Had a really nice game. They both had a sack. But the reason why they both had a sack is because it's the in tandem pass rushing that we're finally starting to see. As John Allen said, rushing as one, not as four individuals. And I told you this earlier this week on Duron Payne's sack. That's an example of being in sync because Duron Payne starts to loop to the middle. It's not a called stunt. It was a freelanced stunt. But then once Allen sees what Payne is doing, he then loops back outside to fill the gap, to fill the void that left by Payne. Ron Rivera talked about this happening at other times with this line. That's a good sign, and that's something they need more of. But here's the real issue for Detroit. This is where they're weak on Sunday. So they have an all-pro center in Frank Ragnow. He hasn't practiced this week. They have Pro Bowl left guard. He hasn't practiced this week. They have issues at right guard. It's a bad situation for them. Taylor Decker, their left tackle, is slowed as well. That's going to be an area that Washington has to take advantage of. Again, Jonah Jackson, left guard, I don't know what he's going to play. And I just mentioned him. He was a Pro Bowler. But without those two inside, plus a right guard that just had a tough game last week, and the starter there is out as well. So that's an issue for Detroit. That's where Washington can really take advantage. Now, Jared Goff, one thing is you want to put pressure on him. You want to put pressure on every quarterback. This team does feel that Goff responds well under pressure. Last week, though, he was 9 for 18 under duress. There were a couple drops by DJ Chark, was one of the guys who dropped the ball. I saw a couple drops in those situations. Goff did get rid of the ball very fast. His average time of release or time before throwing was 2.47 seconds. That was the fastest time in the NFL in week one. But that's where if you can win inside and they can create some issues up there and then occasionally get sweat. And in Casey Toohill, James Williams, push Goff up, pinch him inside. They could have a pretty solid day inside there. By the way, Sweat had a good game in the opener, but they really liked, too, what Casey Toohill did. The feeling with him, and this is where you go, and I'm going to go back to that 51 set for a minute here since I thought of it. But one of the things that he gives you in that 5 D lineman set is a guy who can drop and play in some coverage, play in space. You saw that last week. They bring the corners aggressively, but if you're going to do that, they still like to bring 4 and drop 7, but that 4 can come from anywhere. So you saw with the corners a couple times some corner blitzes, and you'd see the tackles, for example, drop in the middle. You'd see Toohill drop on occasion, and they like Toohill and Shaka Toney in that kind of role. So if they go to a 5D lineman set, there are things that you can do in the pass game. It's not just to stop the run. It's to create almost like a de facto 3-4 look for an offense because who is going to come? They may not always send 5, so who is going to come? That's what Toohill gives you, and that's what those guys can be effective, pinching toward the middle, letting Allen and Payne have a big day. And then along with that, corners have to play well. The one thing I know there was a lot of heat thrown at the corners last week. One of the things they really liked was the aggressiveness and the physical play by the corners, Fuller, St-Juste, and Jackson. They need to continue that this week. Detroit does have weapons that can hurt you. They're not a bad offense at all. So those guys have to kind of clamp down, have a good game as well, along with that interior pressure.
The NFL's opening week was action-packed, and it's just getting started. Get ready for week 2 of touchdowns, big plays, and even bigger wins with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. This week, new customers can bet just $5 on any football game and get $250 in free bets instantly. Everyone can experience the thrill of DraftKings early win promotion. It's simple. This Sunday, bet on any NFL team to win. If your team leads by 10 at any point during the game, you get paid instantly, even if your team loses. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use promo code KEIM, K-E-I-M, to get $250 in free bets instantly when you place a $5 bet on any football game. That's code KEIM, only at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See show notes for the details.
Finally, the last one, the last key to me, win outside on offense. That means the receivers against Detroit's secondary. One of the things the Lions really like to do is play a lot of press man. We saw it last week. There's about half the time against the Eagles, they're going to be in press man. They did a lot of that last year. Now, they will play zone. They definitely will play zone, and it wouldn't shock me if they play more zone this week, because this is a tough offense and a tough receiving core to play a lot of man-to-man coverage against. If they do, these guys have to feast on the outside. And my bold prediction for ESPN.com this week was that Jahan Dotson would top 100 yards for the first time in his career. It's only 2 games, but first time in his career, because I think they're going to have some issues being able to match up all over the place. And Jeffrey Okudah, whom Terry McLaurin knows from Ohio State, knows that he's a physical corner. Then the other issue for them is that I want to make sure I pronounce his name right, Oruwariye, Penn State teammate of Jahan Dotson's. He has not practiced, and there's concern that he may not be able to play. So if he doesn't, that's a big loss for Detroit. So that may limit their ability to play as much press man as they want to and get their hands and test this receiving core in that situation. If they do play a lot of man, even if they don't, I still think you got to win outside. But if they do, then you're going to start to see Washington move some of these guys around. One of the things they did really well last week was exactly that, moving guys around, getting them in motion before the snap and taking them away from some of those press situations, creating an advantage for them by getting them on the move, etc. You saw a lot of picks, screens, we'll call them more obstructive screens, instead of just because they're just running into guys, or at least obstructing them and making it tough to get over there. They did that very well. So if they see that press man, again, it was, for all you guys who want teams to play up a lot, then you would have liked what you saw from Detroit last week as far as the style of play. They give up a lot of points. Keep in mind, I don't think this Lions defense is horrible. I think one of the things that hurt them last week, especially early, was Jalen Hurts' legs. It wasn't like guys are just running wild and running free. There was Jalen Hurts hurt them with his legs. I think A.J. Brown had a nice game eventually and got going after the first quarter. But, so don't just take for granted they're going to just hang a lot of points on them. But I think if the Lions are thinner at cornerback, it makes a big difference. If they stay with their big style of press man, then look for Dotson, to me, to have a big game. And I think the other thing, if they don't, then I like Logan Thomas and J.D. McKissic against their old team. This group did not get rid of them, but I'll never understand why the Lions didn't use J.D. McKissic more when he was here. And Logan Thomas clearly has developed as a player since he was here in Detroit as well. If they stay with man, I think that bodes as well for the outside as it does for Thomas, because the concern for him is that we're going to put a quicker guy on him. That's when he can body up and be effective in the red zone, especially. So there you go. Those to me are the keys of the game. Now, my prediction, I think all week I've been going back and forth in this game because I think this is going to be a very tough game for Washington. I think Detroit is an improved team. You don't want to go 0-2 at home. This is a big year for them to show progress, just like it is for Washington to show some progress. But you can't start year 2 0-2 at home. That makes the Lions a desperate team, no doubt. My concern for them are the injuries. There are some key injuries at spots that I think are going to make it tough for them, especially at the interior and then at corner. If that's the case, then that's why I'm going to stick with Washington in this one. I'll just say Commanders 30-27. I don't know, we'll see if the Lions have the issues along the front. I don't know that they get to 27. It may be then a 27-21 type game. But regardless, I like Washington in this one because of those injuries. So there you go. That's it for me. I appreciate you tuning in. Reminder, check out Between the Hashes, my son Matthew's preview of the college football games this weekend. That's on the Empire Media YouTube page. And he does a game of the week, and he also does an underrated game of the week and hits on some other games as well. And I'll be back after the game with the voice of the Commanders, Graham Weinstein. That podcast will be up probably around 10:30 Sunday night. Video will be up first thing Monday morning. Check it out. As always, I appreciate it, and talk to you next time.